Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for our webinar today. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. There is a Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen. Please utilize that to submit any questions that you may have, and we will take time at the end of the webinar to address those. If you do experience any technical difficulties, there is a question mark help widget that will walk you through some great troubleshooting to solve those issues. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Lundy to get us started.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. As Emily said, welcome. Really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you for joining us. This is Brian Lundy, VP of Customer Success at Insight. First, as we get started here, it's not controversial to say that e-commerce, digital are no longer a nice to have, but really an absolute must. Companies today are facing immense pressure, competitive market and customer pressure, pressure to offer intuitive and easy-to-use solutions, and internal pressure from field sales, for example. Hold on one second here. Just a second. Let me just do a quick share check one more time. Got a note that you guys can't see my screen, so let's do that quick share. And hopefully you guys can see my screen now. All right. So we've got our technical glitch out of the way for the webinar. Thanks for your patience. So no, as I was saying, the companies are facing immense pressure today. We talked about market pressure, right? That's real. They're facing pressure from internal team members like their field sales team, as an example. Oftentimes, those individuals that are very close to the customers on a daily basis are hearing from them, and they are hearing what they expect and actually, and sometimes demand from them in order to continue to do business with them from a digital solution and services standpoint. Not to mention shareholder pressure. It's generally expected that a company's digital, IT, marketing teams, or often a combination of, own and have a plan and a roadmap focused on accelerating efforts to offer more digital solutions and services to not just be competitive, but really provide an exceptional customer experience that ultimately will influence revenue growth, cost takeout, and improved user experience for retaining existing customers, as well as net new customer acquisition. Here at Insight, we work with distributors and manufacturers from varied industries, many of whom have very rich and deep traditions within their business and have been around for 50, 70, and sometimes literally 100 years. Many of these customers of ours have built their business on exceptional service, deep product knowledge and expertise, and quality products. These traits have not only kept them in business for many years, but really allowed them to thrive. And these are the same traits that now need to be translated into their digital experience, critically important again. So with that said, where do you start? And really, why are we here today? The graphic on the screen here shows that a quick Google search of B2B commerce can yield well over 12 million results. Great. How do you filter through the noise and determine what's most relevant to you and your business? So today, we're really pleased to have two Insight customers who have been there, done that, and coming from a little bit different perspective each. They've executed strategies that have allowed them to build their business cases and ultimately make detailed and informed platform decisions. So with that, again, handing it over to Caesar and Max, I'd like the opportunity for them to introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of dive in here into the webinar topic. So Caesar, thanks for joining us. Would you mind doing a quick introduction?
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for the invite today. So my name is Caesar Pereira. I'm the Director of E-commerce for Bunzl North America. Been here for about 11 and a half years. Our North American corporate headquarters is in St. Louis, but our e-commerce and digital team is based out of Chicago, where I am. A little bit of background on Bunzl. We're a large and successful distribution group that provides hundreds of thousands of products that are essential for our customers in the successful operation of their business. The majority of our customers are in markets including food service, grocery, safety, cleaning and hygiene, retail, healthcare, and others. Chances are just about everybody on this call has actually used our products within the past couple of weeks and probably didn't even know it. So along with our organic growth, we actually grow a lot through acquisitions as well, which means we acquire technology, which also means we've acquired multiple e-commerce platforms over the past 10 to 15 years. So about 4 to 5 years ago, we knew we needed a solid strategy and a platform to help us reach our future digital and e-commerce goals.
Awesome. That's great. Great overview. Thanks, Caesar. Max?
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me as well. I appreciate it. So my name is Max King. I'm the Vice President of the Aftermarket for Cleaver-Brooks, and that basically what the aftermarket is for us is the parts business and conversions business worldwide. And I also manage our e-commerce initiative as well. Little history or background on Cleaver-Brooks. We're a boiler company, founded over right at 90 years ago, so we're a very old company, if you will. We sell burners, boilers, controls, exhaust solutions, and then the parts and conversions that I manage. And we're a brand that has several other brand names as well. The Cleaver-Brooks is our main brand name. We also have Camus, Industrial Combustion, and Chimney. So this specific e-commerce discussion, though, does revolve around the Cleaver-Brooks brand. We do similar to what Caesar was talking about. We serve several industries. Some of the key ones are healthcare, education, a lot in the food and beverage, manufacturing, pulp and paper. Hotels and hospitality is another one. The most recent time you've probably remembered you came into contact with a boiler is if you had a nice hot shower at a hotel recently. From our standpoint, some of the reasons we needed to invest in e-commerce from our perspective as an OEM, we've got a great rep network out there, so it's exclusive territories. They're all independently owned businesses, and there's 36 of them in the U.S. and Canada. They do a phenomenal job of providing parts locally and also the service locally to keep our equipment running the way we'd like it to be running. And this really, for us, was an avenue to have e-commerce, was to open up another channel, if you will, another touch point with potentially customers that do not know us today maybe. The reps do a great job in their local territory, but even with how well they do, there are gaps and maybe some folks don't know us. And also our product is one that we have on the parts side of the business. There's about 70% of a boiler that's integrated in a factory with supplier parts. So that is what our website addresses as well. So even competitive boilers can get their parts on our website as well. So our goal is really to expand the customer base that we collectively serve between us and the representatives.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate the overview, Max. And we'll dive in with you first. And I think it'll be interesting for those in attendance to hear a little bit about how you're working to serve the channel while, again, expanding and opening up new opportunities within the market. So that's great. Let's kind of navigate ahead here and maybe start with just that platform evaluation process that you went through, and just take us through this, Max, if you could.
Yep, absolutely. So at the highest level, we kind of came up with a business case. We obviously needed e-commerce. We thought it would expand sales and be incremental revenue for us and our representatives. So what we did was we started with a request for a proposal or an RFP process. Our specific document was about a 28-page document with some kind of high-level overview of what we were expecting from our platform partners that we were evaluating. And really it's just a document that captured some of the things that we felt we needed inside of a platform. Some of the things, like you need to be able to have certain, you need to be able to have home pages and help pages and product detailed pages with certain requirements. And we basically asked all of our vendors that we were evaluating if that was out of the box, whether we needed an implementation partner to make that happen, or whether that be true custom. And it's really a self-evaluation for those folks to be able to do. And you can see we sent that to 11 different platforms, and we gave everybody somewhere around 3 to 4 weeks to fill out those documents, return those, and then basically based on their self-evaluation and some information we got, we were able to down select from 11 down to, I think, 5 we actually talked to on the phone. And from those 5, we were able to select our final 3 that we thought we could potentially partner with in the future. So once we down selected to those 3, what we actually did was as an entire team, and when I say entire team, it's IT, sales, marketing, basically everybody that's going to interact with the platform and use the platform either from a user standpoint or setup standpoint. We did in-person interviews with all 3 of the platforms, and afterwards, after we went through all 3, we have a process. I'm a mechanical engineering by degree, and I like some of these more statistical-based things where it's not just pure emotion, but the Pew Matrix and AHP, and the next slide will kind of touch on how we went through that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So really each... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask Max, you mentioned the in-person interviews with the entire team. From your perspective, the cross-functional engagement in the process, I mean, how important was that to you and your business?
It was key for us because everybody's got slightly different requirements. IT would like maybe the one that's you can easily stand it up. It's very easy to deal with from a management standpoint. Marketing has requirements where they need to be able to maybe maneuver inside the platform and do the CMS content really easily. And then sales obviously wants to make it as appealing and maybe a more SEO focused to make sure people can find the information and be able to navigate the site correctly. So it was key for us to have everybody involved.
Yeah, no, that's great. And if everybody's anchoring to the ultimate goal of kind of expanding net new opportunity as well as serving the channel, and you're always looking at that, that tends to help make that process successful as well.
Okay, so this is what a Pew Matrix is, and basically what we did as a team is, like we said, everybody focused on their individual requirements, but in the end, we made compromises and kind of went back and forth, and these are the 10 or so key criteria that we basically ranked each one of the platforms against. So I kind of simplified this. There's usually a baseline. In our case, there was no e-commerce site was our baseline, but then each of the 3 competitors, if you will, we ranked on each one of these specific criteria. So we looked at the total cost to actually implement the platform. You can see user experience was actually our most important. I always anchor everything to 10 because it's easy to kind of have a baseline of 10, and you can see from our personal experience, and this in the next slide we'll actually cover, but these are voted on by the team, if you will, on what's most important. But you can see from our standpoint, one, the user experience to be very good for a customer. The implementation team we'd be dealing with was very important to us. The functional requirements, the platform had to meet our functional requirements. We weren't going to be able to compromise much on that. And then you can see as we go on, there's some other key criteria that we evaluated as well. And I blurred out the numbers. I won't tell you how much Insight won our evaluation by, but they were, from our perspective, a clear winner from a platform standpoint for Cleaver-Brooks and Insight to be able to work together to provide an e-commerce solution for our customers.
Great. I appreciate that, Max. And like you said, having a subjective scale as well, or subjective criteria as well as some very finite ratings and importance ratings across the different teams is critical. So that's great.
So this just kind of touches on, and like I said, these are all Six Sigma tools. I think most of them are available out there, but this is one I like to use as well in conjunction with that importance criteria that was on the previous Pew Matrix. It may look fairly random with those decimal places, but really what it is, it's AHP stands for Analytical Hierarchy Process. It's kind of a wordy thing, but in general, you take a one-to-one view of every single criteria against the others. So in this case, I just quick did an example of user experience to implementation time. And in our case, we ranked user experience, I think at a 5 or a 7 versus implementation time. It was more important to make sure we had the user experience correct than maybe implement the product a month sooner. So that's really what you do as you go through this entire process, and you rank one against the other until you've gone through the whole matrix. And in the end, it spits out as and you do this as a group, and there was some debate, and we didn't always necessarily, agree. It might have been a 1 on the timeline versus 1 on user experience. But as a team, you kind of come to these agreements, and that's what helps set that kind of importance ranking that's then used in the Pew matrix to actually do the multiplication on each one of the criteria we evaluated on. It might have been for example, a 3 times user experience would have resulted in a 30 score for that, and then at the bottom it totals up at the Pew matrix. So this is just one way to try to walk a team through. Maybe you had a better presentation, but when you got down into the details from one vendor versus another, maybe this is a nice way to objectively take a look at the data and try to choose the right partner from a long-term process standpoint. So, and like I said, we did choose Insight, and it's produced a lot of good results for us so far. That's kind of a high-level overview of how we came to the conclusion that we chose Insight. And I think now that's, unless there's specific questions, I can answer those. If not, I believe we'll hand it off to Caesar.
Good. Yeah, I think we'll, unless we're seeing any questions coming in immediately, we'll hand it off to Caesar, and then we'll maybe come back to some of the points that you made, Max. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yep.
Caesar?
Hey, Brian. Could we actually go back one slide? I wanted to make a comment. Since we went through a very similar process that Max went through, one category that we added on ours was actually the ability to configure with features. We knew we had some requirements that would require customization and development. So one of the things that we did with our final 3 platform providers is we actually gave them one feature and asked them to give us a little prototype and a demo of it. And when we went to the other 2 of the final 3, other than Insight, basically they answered and said, hey, we're going to work with one of our partners, it might be offshore, but give us about 3 to 4 weeks, and we'll actually show you a prototype, or actually we'll just talk through, how we would build that feature, or how our implementation partner would build that feature for you. When we did that with Insight, at the Insight team, we actually happened to be at the Insight office, and we posed that same question. And kind of, we didn't ask for this, but one of the really cool surprises we got is they actually brought in one of their technical people, and in 40 minutes, they had a little demo of that customized feature working, just to show us that, configurability and customization wasn't going to be a problem. Where the other 2 vendors sent that off to 3 or 4 weeks, and maybe we'll show you something that's working. We actually got a little, quick working demo of a feature that we gave those 3 top vendors. So I just wanted to mention that. But we went through a very similar process that Max and Cleaver-Brooks went through. These slides are excellent.
Yeah, I appreciate that story, Susan. That's great. Both of you guys came to a point where you came down to the final 3 at some point. Is that when you kind of dug deep, or can you share with maybe those that are attending the webinar at what point you maybe got a little bit deeper into the platforms, into functional capabilities out of the box versus what needs to be configured versus customized?
Sure. I can go first. But we went into a really deep dive with the final 3. If we thought there would have been a 4th, that would have been close. We made it, 3 wasn't a magic number, but there was 3 that we were, pretty high on. And then that's when we did, similar to what Max said about, a 3 to 5 week process where, we were dating, for about a month each. And then, it was getting in pretty deep with implementation partners, as well as the platform, and going into details about requirements and gaps, and how implementation would work with the different platforms and the different implementation partners.
Yeah, Brian, and from our standpoint, we had a pretty detailed document on that RFP that we sent out. I mentioned it was 28 pages, and that gave us a good baseline for what we expected to get out of a platform. But yeah, then those three, we took some of those responses and really dug in to understand, maybe why they rated themselves that they could walk on clouds versus maybe it would be a heavy lift for the platform. So we dug in pretty deep into some specific requirements that we needed as a business to help meet our expectations of the product that we would deliver, as well as our representatives. Since we go through a representative channel, we wanted to make sure we had those specific requirements lined out, and the platform could also meet those as well.
Yeah, and Max actually gave a really good comment that usually the vendors self-rate on each of those criteria that you give them. You want to make sure you hold them accountable and ask for details and ask for some prodding questions to really validate that those self-ratings are accurate.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's great. I think you gave, obviously the example of the use case, that you asked, for the vendors to solve for you, Caesar. But either one of you have any more color around how you validate, the self-assessments that are provided?
From our standpoint, go ahead, Caesar.
So for us, it was visual. When we were looking at a specific category of features or a specific module, depending on the vendor, we wanted to see it actually work. It's one thing to cross, or put a check mark by a requirement, but it's, we were actually, had days with the vendors and with the implementation partners and said, I trust you, but let's validate it. So visual, giving us demos as we're going through the requirements, and because then we can say, yeah, maybe that one's a half check mark because there's just so much detail that you can put in those requirements documents, and then it's more of a discussion. And then if the partners are present as well, it also gives them more color on being able to estimate and really give you a really good feel on what the effort and the cost is going to be on the implementation side, if there's going to be any customization whatsoever. But just validating and trust but validate was really key for us.
Yeah, we had the same experience. We trusted but verified on some of those self-evaluations. One thing for us, we have a lot of large customer strategic accounts that may be interacting with the platform, and one of the things we wanted to make sure we understood, because we vetted it out with Insight, and they actually had a great out-of-the-box functionality, was kind of that hierarchy and approval chain. So if you have a purchasing manager for a large customer, that there can be kind of purchasing agents that maybe have up to a $5,000 limit, and then it has to go through an approval process before parts would actually be allowed to ship and the POs and everything would happen. So we actually had Insight walk us through that functionality, and we understood whether we could use the out-of-the-box and or whether we needed some modifications maybe to that, just to look and feel or actual functionality, the way it flowed through the system. So we did the exact same thing. For key requirements that anybody has on the phone, make sure you vet those out that may be unique to your industry or your customer experience.
Yep, that's great. Now, challenge and make sure you get the answer that you're looking for ultimately, right? Push to prove, I guess, for lack of for simplicity's sake. Well, good. Caesar, I'm going to move ahead to kind of your story. And again, Max talked about platforming. Again, as we term it, not moving from not having an existing e-commerce platform. Your situation was a little bit different, Caesar, in that you guys were migrating from an existing e-commerce platform to a new platform.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of fast forward through about a 2-year process between the very beginning and then validating with customers and going on from there. But yeah, we We had a lot of different platforms that we acquired over the last 10 to 15 years. So it wasn't just a one-for-one move, but it was really about choosing the platform that was configurable, that was going to meet all of our different needs. So that was really important to us. But where it really started and why we replatformed, it was our customers, and it was our customer feedback. It needed to be, because we needed something better in order to serve our customers better. It wasn't going to be an IT initiative. It wasn't going to be a marketing initiative. This really needed to be a customer initiative, and that was our approach from the very beginning. So we started with our customers. Next slide.
Yep.
So starting with our customers, we needed to talk to them. So in a couple of different instances, we actually brought them to Chicago. I got them all in the same room. We made sure they weren't competitors, but we asked them. We said, what do you like from the platform that you're using? What don't you like? What are you missing? And we really emphasized that we wanted honest feedback. This wasn't just going to be a meeting for show to appease them. It was that we really wanted to improve and made sure that we were a step ahead of our competition and gave them everything they needed to be successful. So honest feedback was really important. Don't hold anything back. In some cases, some of that feedback was a little hard to take, but it was important. So we made sure that they were really honest. And then out of the pain points they gave us, we really prioritized those top 5. And for us, and for some of the groups, because we had a couple of different groups, what we heard a lot was search, being better at search, taking multiple words into consideration, doing autocomplete as you type, more of a Google-like experience. Search was there, real-time data, things such as inventory, order status, things that we needed real-time integration to our ERP systems. Another piece that we heard was mobile. More of our customers were using mobile devices, whether they were in their back office or in their warehouses or in the stock room. And sometimes it was the customers that needed that mobile experience as well. Another piece was modern look and feel, not just to make it look pretty, but usability, to make sure that it was intuitive and that there wouldn't need to be a whole lot of training. The other piece that we were missing was more internal analytics for our internal customers, meaning sales and customer service. Were our customers successful at finding the items that they want, the content that they want, things such as capturing what customers are searching for with 0 results, meaning what are they looking to buy from us that maybe we don't offer them or maybe we're not showing to them. Those were some of our biggest top 5 pain points. Next slide.
Yep.
So then what we did, and we're kind of skipping over everything that Max showed through with the decision matrix. But after we knew that Insight was our top platform, our top choice, and we chose the top implementation partner for Insight, we actually asked that implementation partner to build a prototype that addressed each of those customers' pain points. And the goal was not to make this a configuration a development project or something that was really heavy. It was how can we configure the platform, and some of it was show and tell. We weren't going to do the ERP data integration for inventory, but we knew visually what that would look like. So part of it was mocked up screens. Part of it was a working prototype, such as search and adding 30 items to be able to do the Google-like search and the type ahead. But we actually showed customers and everybody that was a part of our decision on replatforming. We showed them before with a couple of different platforms that we had in use, and then we showed after screenshots side by side to say, here's what our customer experience is with search today on the old platforms or our current platforms. Here's what it's going to be like on Insight going forward. So we did that with each of the pain points, and we made it really visual because it wasn't going to be an IT presentation or marketing presentation. It needed to be something that everybody in our executive team and our customers and our customer service, everybody that was validating these requirements needed to see it. And if they saw it, they would get it. We weren't going to get into all the sausage factory stuff that was getting built underneath it. We just needed to say, from the customer perspective, here's what it is like today, and here's how much better it's going to be going forward. And that was really positive experience, and it made selling the initiative to customers and internal staff and our executive team a lot easier. Next slide.
Yep.
So the other thing we did is we didn't just talk to customers before we built it. We talked to them as we built it. And this was talking to our external and our internal customers, getting feedback on the designs. Like actually, as we're going through with the implementation partner and their design team building the designs, the front pages, how the cart was going to work, we actually let them interact with mock-ups before a lot of the expense in the implementation was done. And there were some leading questions like, okay, here's this type of screen. And then we actually had a usability expert watch them interact with the screen and said, how would you do this? How would you add something to your cart? How would you change quantities? How would you check on order status? And we actually recorded them interacting with the mock-ups, and that did a really good job of testing usability, because one thing we were after was making sure that it was very intuitive and it wasn't going to be cumbersome to train, because that's also something else we heard from our customers. And then we had assumptions from the e-commerce team on how things should work, but we verified each of those assumptions and made sure that there was data and there was customer reaction behind it. And then we kept getting feedback even after we launched. So, talking to customers before, during, and after was absolutely key for us to make sure we had the right platform and the right implementation partner and the right plan on how we were going to roll that out to customers. Last slide.
Yep.
And I'm not going to read through these, but from before, during, and after, these are some of the comments that we got about our platform. Some of it talks about the look and feel. Usability was pretty big. We actually had one national grocery customer tell us that the improved design, product information, and the usability made it so much easier to train their new store associates that it was actually giving them a benefit, outside of just ordering from us. They were able to train on the types of items that they purchased from us and that they used within that store and within that department to train them about, here's the pictures, here's all what this item can do, here's the specs, but actually improve that process. So as you can see on this page, we got really great feedback, and we incorporated that, and we actually showed customers how much their feedback changed our approach and some of the features and how it improved the platform over time. And it gave them buy-in. Once we had buy-in from the customers and from our internal staff, then that change wasn't going to be as jarring. They were looking forward to it. And then at that point, all we needed to do is deliver on what we promised. And that's something that, we're always doing and always improving as we roll out more and more of the business onto the platform.
Awesome. No, these are great examples. I mean, you talk a lot about, selling internally and externally, and really just, educating, right? It's bringing along, people along for the ride, helping them understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then how that user experience will essentially be improved, going through this process, and again, how you're looking to iterate and continue to evolve over time. It's not a static project, it's an ongoing program, right? So that's, that's good stuff, Cesar, thank you. Max, from your perspective, anything to comment on this? I know, you talked a lot about, again, just the need to open up new opportunities. So it's a little bit different there in terms of, going to customers, but serving your channel, thinking about your internal customers. Any comments that you have about just that internal or external onboarding process that occurred for you?
Yeah, so from our standpoint, it wasn't too much of a transition. I mean, it's nice that e-commerce has been out there for a while. Businesses are starting to get on board. The end customers have seemed to really been able to search and navigate the site pretty easily. In our industry, a lot of folks are looking for an exact part number. They're not coming to a site, shopping for clothes or something where you've got thousands of options you got to weed and sort through. They're looking for an exact piece that failed and they need to have it replaced. And as far as onboarding the representatives, we created some special pages for them to make sure they had a summary of the view of everything customers bought in their local territories and made sure they understood, what the sale, what parts were sold, their commission levels. So those are some of the things we wanted to do with our representatives to create as much transparency as possible to make sure they understood that we were, being forthright with the sales, and they could also then follow up with a service call or anything that might be needed from one of their local customers that they maybe didn't know was in their territory.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Good. So just a couple of items on the insight side. One of the things, kind of going back to earlier comments, mentioned just that we see immense pressure, from the market, again, shareholders, customers, et cetera, to make changes and make changes quickly. And really, as Caesar shared, as Max shared, having a defined plan and then a defined process with which to execute within is really critical to being able to move forward with these initiatives very quickly. And to your point, Caesar, around kind of the 4 to 5 week dating period, you can get deep fairly quickly when you do have that defined plan and process in place. At Insight, we've built a framework to help with this. So whether you have the frameworks yourself, like you had, Max or Caesar, is great. But again, challenging and understanding how platforms can adhere to requirements is really important. When we look at kind of common business value drivers that most of our prospective customers that we're talking to, or existing Insight customers that are working with us on a regular daily basis, we're really looking at what are those, again, KPIs, those value drivers that are really most critical. Highlighted just a few for point of reference here, but oftentimes it is around that it's around revenue growth. It's increasing revenue, increasing share of wallet. It's thinking about how do we create efficiencies within the business, reducing cost to serve, allowing more self-service capabilities and opportunities for the existing customer base, or just really, again, making sure that we translate what our brand experience has always been offline, online, and creating a great digital brand experience. So when we look at, again, when we get an understanding of what's most critical to your business, that customer's business, that really helps us then go back and say, so then what are the native capabilities within Insight, that can help drive that change and drive, the customer adoption, revenue growth, increasing that share of wallet, or again, creating more efficiencies, either for internal customers or external customers with self-service. So it's really about anchoring capabilities to business value drivers, really how we think about it. And then within that, on the customer success side, which is ultimately what myself and my team is responsible for, then we're thinking about how can we look at how customers are leveraging capabilities within the platform to drive areas of need of KPIs that they've set for their business, and are we achieving what we set out to do or aspire to do? And if not, how can we, to your point, Caesar, recalibrate over time or enable more out of the box functionality to achieve those objectives. So again, I won't go through each of these different points here on the screen, but again, really what we've done is put together an assessment that's available for download on our site, where individuals can go out and really take a look at, looking at what our requirements or what are typical requirements. This isn't an exhaustive feature list of insight. It's really an understanding of processes that we went through with customers like Caesar and Max, and said, what do we typically see? From there, it allows us to be able to help you understand exactly what the platform is capable of. And as first and foremost, that's looking at what are our out-of-the-box capabilities. And if you do need to extend, as Caesar mentioned, to meet a business requirement, what does that look like? So that you have a very precise idea of when and where you might need to extend and how that might occur within the platform. And then ultimately getting to a place where we can help, get to, a finite estimation or finite requirements, estimation, and then give customers the tools they need to kind of make that executive business case to their internal stakeholders or shareholders within their organization. Again, this is a lot of detail here, but just to give you an idea of kind of what that looks like, it's really about, again, understanding requirements, understanding how important it is to the business. Is this something that is, a must-have for phase one, or is this something that's more of a nice-to-have for a future phase? And then we can, be very, can provide very direct feedback as to what is fully supported within the platform, what requires maybe some configuration versus those things that, are going to require a development partner to extend, and how that might be done. So then ultimately you get to a point where you, again, can very directly see what's supported out of the box, what again, might be configured, or what you might use a third-party plugin for, like if you have, 4C customer sat surveys on your site, or maybe you're using a, like a live person or live chat for, on-site chat as an example. So again, with that, you can go out to our site and request our assessment. We can deliver that and walk through that process and help with the collateral associated with that. Now, with that, wanted to make sure we left time for questions. So I do see that we have a few coming in. Let me just take a quick look here. Actually, so I just mentioned Caesar. This is more for you. You talked about the 5 weeks of dating again with the 3 vendors, and the question is, without any upfront fees and/or commitments to sign with any of them, can you just explain, kind of what that process looked like and the, commitment from those vendors and/or financial commitments that you made might have been, as much as you're willing to share? Yeah.
Yeah. For those periods with the final 3, there was no financial commitment. It was really working with their sales team and their support teams from both the vendor and the implementation partners. We actually we might have done it a little different than most out there. We actually had each vendor give us their top 2 or 3 implementation partners. And then we chose the partners that went with that platform. So we actually evaluated both at the same time. We said, okay, here's the vendor and the best implementation partner that suits us, and it was a pair. And then we evaluated those 3 pairs over about a month. And some of the 4 to 5 weeks were overlapping. We didn't have any financial commitment. It wasn't, dedicated 4 to 5 weeks with them every day. It was typically how we had it was, like the first 2 or 3 days, that kickoff period, we would be, in the same room with them, either at their office or our office. And then throughout the next 5 weeks, we'd have milestones. So like the first 2 or 3 days, we'd go over, high-level requirements and go over that requirement matrix that we had pre-built. And FYI, Brian, 5 years ago, that assessment would have been fantastic to have, but better late than never. So we went over through the requirements, for 2 to 3 days. We answered their questions. We basically said, what do we need to tell you in the next 2 or 3 days to give you enough ammunition to give us the best proposal and the best estimates. So basically, we worked for the following 2-3 weeks on getting those questions answered, and some of it was iterative. They'd give us questions, and they'd say, yeah, and our response would be either on a phone call or giving them some additional documentation. So that would be, maybe we'd meet one more time about the 3-week mark, and then they would work internally for about a week or two to give their final estimates, proposal, and their recommendation on how the implementation should happen. And then that basically happened with each of our vendors, and then we compared those over several weeks once we got all 3 of them in. But to answer your question, no, there was no financial commitment. It was basically a pre-sales process, at that point.
Okay, good. And I know that was more directed to, comments that you made, Caesar, but anything you'd like or want to add, Max, to that?
No, I'm not sure. I think some people may be asking because of the size of their business, they may be bringing to a platform. Maybe not everybody could do that long of a dating process, as Caesar mentioned. Our pre-sales was basically it involved 3 interviews, and we vetted it out, the in-person interviews, over basically that day period. So we had a little bit more of a compressed thing. Depending on the size of the business and the size of the opportunity, I'm sure it would vary for each person.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's good. And accurate statement, right? I think, one of the things that, we've done at Insight when we built out that assessment is that, to your point, Caesar, when we were working with you 5 years ago, we didn't have that assessment process built out, but we've definitely, through working with you and Max and others, recognized the opportunity to be able to help customers through that process and help them take a really objective look at platforms and help illuminate our capabilities within the platform, but at the same point in time giving them an opportunity and the ammunition sometimes to be able to go out to who else the other vendors that they might be looking at and ask them to prove it, to challenge them, like you had suggested earlier. So for us, it's been a way to really help customers be able to move more quickly through that process and help, again, give them a framework to work within so they can move as fast as their stakeholders expect them to, essentially.
Yeah, and I was going to comment on that. I think if we would have had that, when we were going through the process, I think it definitely would have shortened it up, because some of those questions that were through those iterations back and forth would have been answered kind of by the thorough assessment. And I have seen it in the past couple of years that, what you guys built. So I definitely think that would have shaved some time off the process.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Good. Yeah, so moving through some of the other questions, looking for maybe just a little bit more clarity or depth around the customers that you both serve. And then some examples here were given. For instance, one-time purchase versus repeat orders, ongoing or recurring sales cycle, terms, credit card, more around existing customers or net new, any challenges there? Just reading off a few of the items that were referenced here. Any just more color around the customer base that you're serving or going after that each of you could maybe provide to the audience?
Yeah, so from Cleaver-Brooks' perspective, we're creating the site for kind of new end users that we were hopefully going to come across. So ours started with one-time purchases, and we've actually got a pretty good registration rate where folks have registered on the site, giving us their information. So we're doing follow-up emails and information promotions with those folks. On our site, because we are B2B, we allow credit cards, and we also do have a section where they can actually sign up for terms. So that does help us quite a bit with that more business experience from our end. And
from the Bunzl standpoint, it was I know this isn't a cop-out answer, but it's really all of the above. So depending on what business we're talking about, there are, repeat buyers that are ordering, every week or, almost the same days every month, and they know when the Bunzl truck is going to be there, on time on that regular schedule. But we also have some businesses where I wouldn't call it a one-time purchase because, our average order is probably a lot lower than Max's average order at Cleaver-Brooks. But, we have some businesses that are more B2C-like that do take credit cards. So just because of the wide diversity of our businesses, we needed a platform that can handle all of that with even multiple websites running off the same platform. So for some customers, some businesses, we do terms. Some customers and businesses, we do credit card. And so for us, it's all the above. We needed a platform that could do just about everything that somebody could dream up.
Great. No, that's helpful. Good. Moving on to next question. Smaller company than either of you represented on the call. So question goes to staffing and team. What is the minimal type of staffing, positions, skills, et cetera, that need to be in place before this type of replatforming is practical? I'll take a quick response there, and then Caesar, Max, I'll let you guys chime in as well. Max, during your portion, you mentioned just around the importance of cross-functional alignment. I'd say as we look at customers that are going through a replatforming project, that's important, right? Having just the alignment and those that are participating from typically again marketing, sales, IT is important. But within our customer base, we'll find that supporting the project long term, there may be a single e-commerce lead within that organization that is wearing multiple hats. They're wearing the hat of the marketer, the merchandiser, and they're oftentimes getting input both from customers through customer channels, whether it be inside, outside sales, personnel, working with IT as needed and as appropriate, and then working with an appropriate implementation and development partner to help augment some of the work that they might be doing. But we often again see teams that are as lean as one person really driving the efforts. But it is important, I would say, to get input across the organization. I don't know, Caesar, Max, any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, Brian, I would agree with everything you just said. Obviously, the scale of your initiative will determine, your staffing. For us, we wanted to make sure, so we never call it an e-commerce project because a project has an end date. So the way we refer to it internally, it's an initiative and a core competency going forward. So we knew we couldn't just, quadruple the team or triple the team overnight. We've been doing it slowly over the years, organically, adding, one or two members as we need, and then we're using our implementation partner to help us scale quickly. But we also, are making sure we're looking at the financials and the bottom line to say, that we're going to need everybody that we bring in full time. So, and that's on the IT side, that's on the marketing side. We've brought more product information experts, so we can, we've gotten great feedback about our products and our enriched products so far. So making sure that we have expertise in house where maybe we didn't have as much 5-6 years ago. So on the marketing side, that's been really helpful. And on the development side, now we know for our business, we need a lot of customization. So again, we leverage our implementation partner to do a lot of the bursting for personnel to get that those feature and customizations done promptly when our customers need them. But we have been growing slowly internally. So kind of my answer is making sure that as you add staff, that you're you're looking at the long-term future, and then everything that maybe you're not 100% sure that needs to be staffed long-term. You use really good partners to help you get up to speed quickly, and that you bring only the long-term staff that you know you're going to need 2, 3, 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're looking at it from a small perspective, I'd say you absolutely need an e-commerce champion inside. Whether that's the sales or the marketing, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as there's one person that's really driving the initiative. And then minimally, I'd say you need somebody that's fairly strong from an IT representation standpoint, the marketing standpoint, and the sales. And the other thing, depending on if you guys have ERP systems, you'd want to make sure your ERP expert is involved as well, because there's so many ties into data sharing, and like for example, we use a data warehouse up in the cloud basically. But regardless, you need to know where information is going to come from and to and back and forth to make sure everything works fluidly. Would probably be my minimum recommendations.
Yeah, that's great, and that actually aligns well with probably the last question that we'll be able to address during the webinar itself. Know that we'll follow up with individuals who maybe we didn't hit every question after the webinar. But with that, mentioned here in the question, at least within the RFP, the screenshots that were shared, or the PowerPoint slides that were shared, didn't see any requirements for integration to ERP systems. Assume you want to transfer order information from the e-commerce platform to your ERP so that you can process the order and for financial reconciliation. So, yeah, I think, Max, you already touched on this a little bit, but if both of you want to expand just upon, integrations and the importance of having those systems of record, like your ERP, being, tightly integrated into, the commerce experience.
Yeah, from our standpoint, I'll touch on this just a little bit more. We have a very close tie to our ERP system. We use IFS, if anybody's curious. And in the Pew matrix, it's bundled up underneath functional requirements. So that was one of our requirements, that we had to either have out-of-the-box functionality or know that we could create all the connections we needed to make sure financial information, order information, the parts that were ordered on the e-commerce site went right to our warehouse and we're able to print on the system just like our other orders come through, so we can pick, pack, and ship those products out as soon as possible to our customers.
Yeah, and for us on the Bunzl side, it's really important for us to keep the ERP system, the system of record for the data that it needs. So we don't duplicate data on the e-commerce system, so we do as much real-time or near real-time integration as possible, and that includes inventory, order status, shipment details, pricing and availability. So we do quite a bit of real-time integration, because today's day and age, customers need that immediate feedback to see what's available and when are they going to get it.
That's great. Perfect. Good. Yeah, as mentioned, we're just about 2 minutes, a minute and a half before the top of the hour, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And just a couple of quick items. As mentioned, those questions that we didn't address directly on the webinar, didn't have time for, we'll make sure to respond as a follow-up. Also, again, just a reminder, you can request our assessment on our site as indicated on the slide here. So, Cesar, Max, thank you both. This is great. Really appreciate you sharing your experiences with the webinar audience here today. This is a great session. So, thank you, and thank you all for your time, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody.